I'm Allie Hedges, and welcome to Joe, Jay, and the other heads of state. Now, for two men who are active in politics in rather different ways, in the case of Joe and Jay Paterno, the apple did fall far from the tree. Joe is a loyal Republican who has befriended many GOP leaders over the years, in particular, former President George H.W. Bush. And as for Jay, he's a very active Democrat who played his part in electing President Barack Obama in 2008 and continues to do his part for the upcoming 2012 election.
I am not interested in politics in the sense of running for office or being in any kind of an organization or in a administration is a word I was struggling for.
Now, for a man not interested in politics, Joe Paterno has had a very powerful career in which he did much more than coach a winning football team.
My problem with my job as a coach now is that there are other things that come into being that weren't there 15 years ago.
Like?
Oh, speeches, doing this show, being away from the campus, those kind of things. I used
Fundraising?
Fundraising for the university.
Paterno had never been interested in running for political office, and yet his actions and achievements made at Penn State can be easily seen as those of a great politician. He's also befriended and challenged some of America's political leaders, most notably Richard Nixon.
I've wondered how President Nixon could know so little about Watergate in 1973 and know so much about college football in 1969.
And look what happened when Nixon tried making it up to Joe.
The phone rings, it's the White House. The president would like you to come down, and we're going to give you a trophy for having the longest winning streak in the country. I told him to shove it.
Now, regardless of his tiff with Nixon, Joe has been an active supporter of the Republican Party, between donating funds, giving speeches of support for candidates, and even prepping his own son, Scott, for a run at a GOP congressional seat. Of all the Republican presidents that Paterno had befriended over the course of his career, there was one with whom he had a special relationship.
I'm only interested in going down and helping a guy I think is a friend of mine and who I think will make a great president, period.
Both Ivy League athletes, George Bush Sr. was a baseball player from Yale, and Paterno graduated 2 years later as a football star from Brown. The two men sought very different career paths. As George commanded the U.S. military through the Gulf War, Joe ultimately led his own troops to 2 national championships and 409 wins, making him the winningest coach in Division I football. And Paterno's use of rhetoric inspired Penn State's own Congress, or the Board of Trustees, to invest more funds into education. Joe has been described as a financially conservative and socially liberal Republican, which falls in line with many of Bush's stances. And although he had no interest in running for public office himself, Paterno had no problem helping out a friend.
Penn State won the national championship in 1986. Joe had made a comment about maybe he'll retire in 2 or 3 years, 25 years ago. And he said when he got out of coaching, maybe he'd want to help somebody become president someday. And George Bush cut out the article and sent him a note and said, hey, keep me in mind.
And so in 1988, in the same stadium where Penn State had won Paterno's first national championship 6 years earlier, he gave a second nominating speech for George H.W. Bush.
I know a lot of people are wondering why an Italian-American football coach from Penn State is doing here. So am I. However, I hope that after 40 years of trying to help young men and women reach their potential as human beings, I'm here as an educator. Obviously, I'm here because George Bush invited me. And on behalf of my family and myself and the state of Pennsylvania, I want to thank him for this great honor. I'm here because I believe George Bush will be one of America's great presidents. George Bush will be a great president, and I humbly second his nomination. Thank you.
The relationship between both men and the media reveals several similarities about their character. Unlike current President Barack Obama, Bush was known to shun the media attention. He gave no farewell address and chose not to write a memoir. He did, however, write the foreword to a book called They Know Joe, which chronicles the life of who else but Joe Paterno. Paterno used the media to further the endeavors of the university and football program, but never exploited it for personal gain, like some other notable college football coaches.
If you called your mama today, I sure wish I could call mine.
Reach out and touch someone. The friendship between Joe and George has sustained the years, even through old age.
When George Bush turned 80, he called Joe and asked if he wanted to skydive with him, and he said, "No, I'm not going to do that." He's been very loyal to Joe. Even when we're having some bad years on the field, he was always very, very loyal to Joe, and Joe's never forgotten that.
Some may have been surprised to learn that the son of a strong Republican like Joe Paterno would actually evolve into a strong and very active Democrat.
President Obama will probably stop by here in the campaign. He has very fond memories of Penn State. He was just here in February. He told me how much he loved his place.
Jay Paterno endorsed then-Senator Barack Obama in 2008 and played a big role in the president's first election campaign.
I got involved with the campaign, and the energy that was involved in the students that I was around, it really just lit a fire under me.
When they see him and listen to him, I think it is very impacting because he does support the president. He did it in 2008 when he came out and talked for the Biden rally as well. A very memorable speech. So just seeing him and his support, I think it really implores students to get involved.
In addition to making speeches and registering voters, Jay used social media like Twitter and blogging to get his message out, something that the president himself used to resonate with young voters.
That's what basically got him elected. Like, it's a huge tool.
Social media is a way to really tell your story, and without the filter of media editing or interpreting, it's a good way to get your message out.
And while we know which corner Jay will be in this upcoming election, it's interesting to see how his father's lessons led to many of the values he strives to uphold through political action.
He said to me, "You don't have kids yet, but when you do, you realize that your happiness is defined by your least happy child. Your happiness is defined by your least happy child. And we as a country should have that attitude about all the children and all the people in this country."
I'm Allie Hedges. Thanks for watching.